I don't know if you saw the paper today, the Times. Tensions rise in Brooklyn Food Co-op over push to
Yes,
boycott Israeli goods.
yes,
I was just
yes.
wondering your thoughts about that.
Yeah, it's funny. This co-op thing has been going on for such a long time.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and it's funny, right? Because it's kind of like, for like New Yorkers, the New York Times, like a Brooklyn food co-op is kind of like the center of the world, you know?
Like Park Slope, it's Park Slope.
Park Slope, right,
Right,
exactly.
right.
Like that's just, it's so much so culturally proximate to like the New York media. Um, and I think Brad Lander said something like, I think he said he opposes the boycott at the
Right,
food
but he
co-op.
didn't make a big speech. He just
Yeah,
the other guy, who's the other guy who's running, did make,
Goldman. I'm sure
yeah.
Goldman is, yeah. Look, I mean, my own view about this is it's never been easy. It's not easy for me to say that I want the boycott of all these Israeli goods. I really wish this were not, I wish there was another way to pressure Israel and to get Israel to stop doing the things that it's doing. But it seems to me the overwhelming evidence is that um, if there's a non that there isn't another way, right? You can't. I believe in talking to Israelis, but talking to Israelis alone is not going to change Israel's behavior. Israeli politics on its own is not going to have some dramatic shift. I mean, just look at the debate in Israel. There's nobody in Israel, mainstream Israeli Jewish politics, who wants to fundamentally change Israel's policy towards the Palestinians. There's basically an overwhelming consensus. I wish this were not the case, but this is the case, right? And I don't want, I don't want attacks on Israeli civilians, right? I don't want Israelis to die, right? So then how can I oppose a nonviolent movement calling for boycotts, right? I can't ask Palestinians to sit back and just live forever without basic rights and not try to do anything about it. My predisposition has to be to support nonviolent efforts at pressure. And yeah, is it uncomfortable for a lot of Jews? Yeah, it's uncomfortable for a lot of Jews. It's uncomfortable for me. Will it hurt some Israelis? Yeah, it'll hurt some Israelis. They Sabra hummus won't make as much money and maybe they'll have to lay some people off. But you know what? That's if that's what it takes in order to end a system of apartheid, a process that's been called genocide by the world's leading human rights organizations, then yeah, that's the best option we have, it seems to me. And when it came to other situations, when it was apartheid South Africa, or even the Jew, people understood the logic of a boycott by that people were calling for an oppressed community. People always say, well, why aren't they boycotting China? Doesn't China do terrible things? The reason is that the Chinese people have not come together and asked America to boycott. The Palestinians have come together and asked Americans to boycott. And so, if they're asking for this, I think that and it has overwhelming support among Palestinian civil society. Then I think the answer is that we should support it, and in hopes that this will be one small, part of a process of making Israelis realize that they have to reconsider the way they're treating Palestinians. There has to be some economic cost to Israel. If there's not an economic cost to Israel, I don't think it's likely that Israel's going to change. And so then Palestinians are going to soon continue to live in a way that nobody should have to live.
Do you think that would change with a Democratic takeover?
Well, my hope is that a democratic takeover will lead to a shift in U.S. policy on arms sale, on military aid, and
Mm.
maybe even on arms sales. Because there's a difference between military aid, which is us giving Israel the money to buy the weapons. So basically, they get them for free. And then the question is, are we willing to sell Israel the weapons if they're willing to pay for them? I think what's interesting about the Democratic Party is we're moving towards more and more people saying they oppose military aid. I think the big division that's emerging may be between people who, on the question of arms sales, what should we be willing to sell Israel? I hope a president will even put restrictions on that. and would also say that we're not going to shield Israel in the international criminal institutions like the International Court of Justice and Criminal Court. So that's my hope. These are all forms of nonviolent pressure to get Israeli leaders to say, you know what? This system of apartheid, of supremacy, of aggression, it's no longer working for us. And we need to have a plan B. And I think if you look at apartheid South Africa, or even if you look at Northern Ireland, or even if you look at the Soviet Union under Gorbachev, what the best case scenario is that someone emerges politically who comes to the realization that they can't continue to do what they're doing, and they become open to a new kind of conversation. And that over time that they can then move to a fundamental recognition that the system itself needs to change. That's where I hope we could go.
Chances of that, I don't know.
I mean, I don't think the chances of that are great, but
Yeah.
we're still, I think, pretty early on in what could be a long process. And it's also important to remember that oftentimes we don't see these things coming. I mean, F.W. de Klerk, when he became the leader of South Africa, of apartheid regime, was not a radical. He was like from the belly of the beast of the Afrikaner political establishment. Gorbachev, too. Gorbachev was a Communist Party apparatchik. But these guys took power, they looked around, and they said, this horse that we're riding, it's dead, right? It's dying. Like, we can't continue to ride this horse, right? We have to dismount and try something else. And
Who
my
among the
hope is,
Democrats do you see that might do that?
I think I think Ro Khanna would do it. I think AOC would do it. I think maybe John Ossoff would do it. But I think that even if we have a Democrat who's not as much from the left, although I would prefer a more left-wing candidate, it could be that even one of those candidates, when they get in office, given the way that the Democratic Party public opinion is moving, that they might get to that place too. Because it's just the overwhelming number of Democrats now don't support this position of unconditional support for Israel anymore.
Israel is just out of control. That's how it seems to me in a way.
Yes, it is. And I think, again, I think it's a function of a lot of it is a function of this impunity that Israel's had to be able to do all these